Work it, make it, do it, makes us harder, better, faster, stronger. More than power, never, ever, after work is over. Work it, make it, do it, makes us harder, better, faster, stronger.
Welcome, everyone. It's so great to have such a high caliber group with us today. If you've joined us before, welcome back. If this is your first time, thank you so much for being here. I'm Camille Fetter, the founder and CEO of Talentfoot Executive Search. For over 15 years, we've specialized in placing transformative leaders across sales, marketing, technology, operations, and finance. Since the inception of the firm, we've been at the forefront of reshaping organizations by way of recruiting leaders to drive digital transformation for organizations of all sizes. But today, as I'm sure you are feeling with me, all of this is feeling quite different. Everything that we're talking about and we're experiencing in this AI age, it just doesn't feel anything like digital transformation has over the last 15 years. To give you some insider baseball, because I'm constantly being asked from executives, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? We're seeing quite a bit around reshuffling talent at the top. Our confidential searches are skyrocketing. Organizations, boards, investors feel like executives aren't moving and adopting fast enough to the technology changes. There is a flattening of mid-management. That layer is diminishing quite frequently among the conversations we're having with hiring teams. And the pressures from boards and investors to do more with less is only increasing. And AI is essentially being added to almost every candidate scorecard among our search work across the board. I'm confident, so that's a little insider baseball for you. I'm confident that today's conversation will help you prepare for what lies ahead. And this is very much a conversation that is forward-thinking. We're not playing catch-up. We are absolutely preparing for the future, not only for what lies ahead for the remainder of this year, but for many years to come. We're excited to dive into what really this conversation is about and understanding the shift from headcount to agent count. And that's what today, in this next hour, will be all about. Today will be highly interactive, so please have your chat feature ready and accessible. We'd like to start off by getting familiar with who's in the room and giving all of you a chance to get familiar with who's in the room as well. If you could include in the chat your title, your industry, your location, and what your view on the AI movement is. I'm going to give you some options for that. So again, your title, industry, your location, and then your view on the AI movement. A, you feel like it's overhyped. B, this feels like 2010. It's interesting, but it's incremental. C, it feels like 1994. The internet is about to change everything. Or D, like it feels like 1882, a foundational shift like electricity entering homes. So if you could drop those 4 items in the chat, that would be great. Okay. We've got overhyped. We've got folks calling in from all over the world. Thank you so much for being here. Feels like 1882. Feels like, yep, this is massive movement, massive change. We've got some folks that feel like it's like the internet, it's about to change everything, but it's not like 1882. So yeah, we've got some folks all over the board, but I'd say for the most part, it looks like most of us here feel like this is about to change a lot, which is probably why the topic interests you. All right. We are going to learn a ton from our speaker today, but please feel free to speak amongst yourself. You can see by those in the room, we've got an incredibly intelligent, accomplished group of executives in the room that can all learn from each other. So please don't be shy. Feel free to share tips, ask questions among each other. We're also going to be collecting questions in the chat that we're going to save for Q&A at the end. So please make it as interactive as possible and feel free to share your thought leadership. Okay, now on to our speaker. Over the last year, I've had the real opportunity to learn from our speaker. He's helped me demystify AI in a way that really feels practical and not intimidating. He's helped leaders and organizations like yours think critically and creatively about how to integrate AI in ways that amplify human potential rather than replace it. Please join me in welcoming Jason Green, President and Chief AI Officer of Faye. At Faye, Jason, over the years, has built tremendous organizations with his 2 decades of experience in CRM and customer experience. He's built impactful solutions for mid-market businesses and global enterprises, and as well as the public sector. And today, he's here to help us think about where AI is headed and how to lead the charge. Jason, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, one more question to get the audience engaged and ready for what is going to be discussed next. On a scale from 1 to 3, how would you rate your understanding of AI agents? 1, I'm just starting to wrap my head around it. 2, I'm experimenting regularly and working on prioritizing our use cases. Or 3, I actively educate others and consider myself a thought leader on the topic. Jason, if you can follow the chat and see the trend line, I'm sure that will help you fuel your answer to the next question. All right, lots of 2s, 1s. A lot of folks just getting started.
I like the 2.5 answers.
2.5 is great. And I think a lot of executives we're hearing about, I just had an interview with CIO Magazine earlier this week, and with the reporter, we were talking about how there's a ton of AI failures taking place right now. And the conclusion I've been coming to with a lot of the CEOs and investors that we service is a lot of these organizations have gotten so hungry and excited about AI that they've tried to implement too much too fast, right? And so they're not prioritizing their use cases. And I think that's where a lot of executives are still trying to really work on what is the lowest impact, what is the lowest lift, highest impact in terms of these AI use cases that executives like yourselves are developing and designing. So, Jason, what are AI agents and what is driving this rapid rise in the relevance of AI agents?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we'll talk, it's going to come up more throughout this talk about AI agents. But I think for me, the way I'm going to answer this right now is you have to look at a combination of a couple different things. One is this AI age is a change in how you talk to machines. You just talk to the prompt, you can type to it and it responds to you like a human would respond, which means that it's also generating new information. It's not just retrieving data from a database or from something that other humans have put in. And so these two things together are creating an experience for humans when interacting with it that is human-like in many characteristics. And because of this, it means you now have assistance at your disposal in a very new way. And that means it's reshaping how work works.
And so unlike what data science has been over the years, right? Where we've been able to analyze data, move faster, make decisions faster. This just is entirely different, right? One example I often use with a lot of executives who are wrapping their head around I have a lot of executive colleagues and friends who say, no, 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 this is just a hype, right? This is not that big of a deal. No one can do my work better than I can. And one of my responses, and Jason, I'm curious what your take is on this. One of my responses is, do you know any humans that can access 200 million books in a matter of seconds?
Yeah, that's a great kind of response. And to piggyback off that, one thing really important to understand is that at least through the last couple hundred years, probably through human history, but we'll keep it more narrow, knowledge, experience, and creativity have been scarce and have had a lot of value. And now, if AI has the ability, at least to be perceived, which we'll talk about later, as having as much knowledge, as much experience, or as much creativity as humans, or even more, now those three things become free or nearly free. And that is a profound shift in society, which means it's a profound shift in work. And it's important to think about it from that, through that lens when you're approaching what does AI mean for the business.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have the ability to have someone enter your workforce who doesn't have 20 years of experience, let's say you bring a 22-year-old college graduate in, and they couldn't use AI to have experience and knowledge at a level that would normally take them 20, 30 years to gain. Okay. What does that mean? What does that do to the workforce and how you're hiring and how you're thinking about structuring your business and the markets you can enter?
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for that. It gives me chills. Uh, what would you say is the biggest misconception business leaders have about AI agents and workforce transformation?
Yeah, I think that ties back to the question of, what do you believe? And that's a really important question to anchor everything you're doing around AI. I think a lot of leaders believe it's just another technology shift, kind of like going from on-premise computing to cloud computing, or some sort of shift that's a technological or tool set shift.
Mhm.
I think a lot of leaders have a misconception that this is primarily about cost reduction and job elimination versus making your existing staff superheroes and able to do more. And then I think another thing I often hear is around legislation, the notion that AI is going to be legislated away or that it'll be slowed down through legislation, which, as we know, social media, which is 15 years old, it barely has any legislation today. So good luck with that. And then finally is that you have time to figure it out. And the simple reality is the models and what is available is changing on such a rapid pace. And every month there's a new model that comes out that you simply don't have time not to be figuring it out right now.
Yeah, yeah. And so you mentioned the importance of having an AI posture as an executive today. Shopify's CEO, right? His letter went viral. I believe that that was not just a leak. I think that was very intentional. I'm sure there's other opinions in the room. But do you believe every executive here should have a AI posture, mission statement, manifesto, if you will, just like the Shopify CEO?
100%. It really starts with the values, what you believe, and then the values at the company. Are your values actually going to either change a bit, not necessarily, but how does this AI apply to the values, and thus how does it apply to culture? And having a open letter that's both external, and there's other companies that do that well too. Intercom, for example, has done that as well. But an open letter both internally to your workforce and externally to your partners, your vendors, and your clients is going to show two things. It's one, it's going to show that you're AI forward, that you're leading from the front of it. And two, the workforce has fear. They have fear they're going to lose their jobs. They don't understand what this means for their career. And it shows that you want everyone to be part of it versus AI taking over and moving people out of it.
Great. So you almost see these letters as retention tools, and to reaffirm the workforce that, hey, we are a forward-thinking organization embracing change, and we will lead in a modern way
Correct.
and not become the next Kodak, essentially, right? Or Blockbuster or whatever example you might want to use. So you mentioned this wait and see mode can be quite dangerous. Another question for the audience. Do you believe, think about your timeline. Do you believe that waiting to adopt AI could put your company at major risk as soon as this year in 2025? Drop a Y in the chat if it's a yes, your company can't afford to take the wait and see approach. Drop an N in the chat for no if you believe your company will not be at risk with the wait and see approach this year. Looks like almost about a 50-50 split.
I like how some use lowercase, some use uppercase.
Okay, mixed bag. And depending, certainly, thank you, Gerardo. It depends on industry. I agree with that for sure. I think there's a lot of industries. So for example, Jason and I were actually at a conference at DLE Piper, one of the world's largest law firms, not that long ago. And this law firm talked about essentially replacing a third of their workforce with their 80-person AI function. There are industries that are really preparing quickly for major disruption. And there's areas of professional services like legal services, certainly feeling threatened. Okay, Jason. So let's talk about this wait and see approach. So how dangerous is this wait and see approach, in your opinion, in this new era of agent-based work? And can you factor in the fact that many from our audience are coming from a wide range of industries?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, you touched on it earlier, and I think most of the audience is at least like, look, this is 1994 at least. And I like to always mention Blockbuster Video. What were they thinking in the 90s? And then Netflix came along. They should have been Netflix, right? You had the taxi industry get disrupted by Uber. Now, why these two examples are instructive, even for low tech, is business model, right? You as a business owner, as a business leader, you operate your organization under a certain construct, a current model of what industries and markets you're in, and that can potentially change dramatically as a result of AI. I think the second part to this is why you shouldn't wait and see, is because if you wait, it's possible that things could change in your industry, in your space quickly. Like you could wake up and within 3 months, everything changes. Now, to the points being made by the audience, a lot of that, some of that might not happen for a year, 2 years, even 5 years out. But if you're not already familiar with the technology, the tools, the change up to your organizational structure, and you're really familiar, both yourself and the leadership team and everyone in the company is proficient, your ability to suddenly adapt when it starts changing is going to be hampered. And so I think those are two kind of good ways to look at why you shouldn't wait. I mean, you have a responsibility as the steward of the business from a governance perspective to be taking this seriously.
Yeah, well said. So I was at a conference recently with hundreds of CEOs, and there was a speaker that talked about the tech function and the disruption of the tech function in many organizations. And obviously, we're seeing big tech layoffs hit the press, almost once a week now. This particular speaker said, if your developers are not using specific tools, you mentioned a list of specific AI tools, then you need to find new developers. What's your reaction to that?
So I think that's part of like a broader notion that you need everybody in your organization on board with adopting AI at some level. And in the example of engineering, different types of engineering, you can use AI in different ways. Some engineering and coding stuff, it is dramatically increasing productivity. Others, it's only partially. But to my point earlier, let's say it only increases your productivity by 1.2 or 20% more, which might not be super much right now. But what happens when the new models, what happens when the new tools come out in September and now you can quadruple you as one person being four? And so you have to be ready. I think one of the things is, you know, the market it doesn't care how you feel about AI on a personal level. It doesn't care if you or your staff have been doing something a certain way for the last 20, 30 years. And in fact, that job function has been doing the same thing structurally the same way for 100 years, because some other company, some other organization in the free market is going to figure it out and they're going to become more competitive than you. So I think definitely,
Yeah.
definitely on a broader way.
Okay, excellent. I mean, we're hearing college students leaving in droves right now to start AI startups because it's almost like it's a gold rush, right? They see it as a very small window of opportunity to innovate and disrupt, right?
Yeah, 100. I mean, it goes to what I was saying, where it's like you could take a 22-year-old or someone 19 and what they have available to them from a experience, knowledge, creativity is just completely crazy if you know how to use it.
It is. It is. Fantastic. Okay, audience, on a scale from 1 to 5, how would you describe your organization's AI readiness? 1, no plans or conversations yet. 2, just starting early ideation possibilities. 3, in experimentation. 4, have a clear roadmap in place. Or 5, actively implementing or scaling AI solutions. Question is in the chat as well. I think it's really helpful for executives to hear what their peers are up to, right? And get a
100%.
sense for, oh my goodness, are we behind? Or are we status quo here? Or are we ahead? Lots of 3s, lots of in experimentation. Got a couple 5s, great, some thought leaders at the table here. And some 2s, just starting early ideation. Fantastic. Jason, talk to us about the different phases of implementing AI in an organization today. This is where we're hearing about the AI failures, and you have experience implementing these systems and tools within organizations. What are the phases of that, the best practices framework for success?
Yeah, so I think in terms of phases or stages, I mean, the first, is this awareness and initial exploration. What does everyone believe on the leadership team? Is everyone aligned? That's step one. Getting everyone on board. In terms of developing an AI strategy and posture is key. You might already be doing some tactical experiments, which comes after that, but it really starts at the top with a strategy and a posture around how you're going to do AI transformation and how you're going to go on the journey. After that, you have what I'll call proof of concepts and really starting to understand, what are the swim lanes, either at a departmental level or multiple departments. What are the possible processes? What are the things that we can try out with AI and see how far we can get with it? And so once you're doing that, you're then going to discover and you're going to get some traction. The other area in this kind of stage is what I would call like a multiple modality. So what are you experimenting with? Are you doing AI avatars? Are you doing cloning in terms of voices? Are you using it just for text? Are you doing automations with it? Are you making movies and videos? Like, are you doing all the different possible modalities of what kind of generative AI is possible? And then beyond that is really this transformation, which is kind of keeps going, where you then take some of these proof of concepts, roll them out into production and start further iterating on them, and then start working on other areas across the business and try to just cover as much operational ground as possible. And then really also part of that, which could start earlier, is just starting to think through business model and like, what does this mean for your business model? What does it mean? How could you become super competitive? How can you enter new markets? Is there entirely new industries that your business can now do? And that then, creates a whole new set of things for you to work on.
That's great. We're seeing a lot of the latter, what you just shared. So we have a couple, we have obviously CEOs typically tend to be extreme visionaries, right? And so this is like a candy store right now for those visionaries. And we're getting contacted by these CEOs who've got a whole new level of vision for new revenue streams, new product offerings, new service offerings, because they're leaning into AI in a very strategic way, and it's creating job opportunities for people, right? So we keep hearing these stories of AI replacing talent, but it's also creating a tremendous amount of opportunity. So what about when you think about, so a lot of the executives we work with, they're trying to figure out how do they prioritize their use cases, right? And we always like to say, when we think about that quadrant of low lift, high impact, right? We want to stay in that particular quadrant. What is going to be the lowest lift, highest impact? Do you have any words of wisdom of how these executives can prioritize what might fall into that box?
Yeah, I think you you can start with one department, for example, if you want to keep it focused, and you could focus on, manual tasks that can be turned into, done through AI. Um, you can focus specifically, like if you have something that you can measure, like it's taking us 500 hours a month to do this. In theory, AI could get it down to 5. And then, unlike maybe traditional technology projects where if you implement a CRM or an ERP system, if you get 80% of that implemented, you kind of have nothing. Well, AI is a little different in that sense. Like you could go, what if you go from 500 hours down to 200? Like you didn't reach your goal of 5, but it's still a huge win. And so I think just kind of approaching these in a very agile way and just go as far as you can with very specific tasks is good. I think another thing that I hear and run across is around security and compliance.
Mhm.
And that's a big thing. And we work with clients with HIPAA compliant, ITAR, DFAR, and a variety of different compliance frameworks. You can do don't let a compliance requirement stop you from figuring out how to do the proof of concept. Because there's so much about the proof of concept. There's so much about the experimentation that you could do with mass data or dummy data. And then if it really works, and like let's say in that example is 500 hours, you get it down to 5. The technology and like it's there so that you could make that work for your compliance. And I've seen organizations kind of not do the proof of concept because they're worried about how they're going to get the data problem solved. And I
Mhm.
would just say, well, figure out if the AI does the magic that you think it can, and then worry about the other piece.
Love it. So perhaps an easy place to start would be look at your company's KPIs and potentially pick a KPI that where you think you can drive efficiency with AI. So for example, I met with a Fortune 1000 CIO 2 weeks ago, and he was telling me about his mandate and his KPIs for the year. We always like to ask when we're interviewing executives, what are your KPIs? How is your success measured, right? He said, one of my KPIs for 2025 is to prove that I have saved over 500,000 of human working hours, manpower hours, by the end of the year. So fuels your point.
Right. And then from there, there's so many different sub tasks and components that you
Exactly.
can then, drive things with AI.
That's right. Okay, let's get into the agent talk. What are the practical steps a company should take to begin building and implementing AI agents into their workforce strategy. And then certainly, I think all of us are curious what companies are doing it best.
Yeah, so I think in terms of the practical steps, I mentioned it earlier, to start with strategy, start with posture. Have from a security and compliance, like how are you going to manage the data? Understand what you're doing with data, what people are allowed to do. Having a unified language across the organization in terms of when you say LLM, when you say model, when you say agent, when you say prompt, instruction, etc. Everyone organizationally understands what those words mean, and that can come through education. And we've together all partnered with Section School, which offers a great AI academy that offers courses so you can become AI proficient, and that's something that you can roll out first to leadership and then across the organization. That's important because you need everyone organizationally thinking about what they're going to do with AI, and the way they're going to think about it is if they can become proficient on it. And so I think those are kind of good first steps, in addition to having who is leading AI at the company, who is in the role, right, of AI strategy officer. Someone has to own that in the organization.
And you have a strong opinion on how to identify that individual in your organization. What's the framework there? How do you identify who is capable and most qualified to lead that charge?
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting question because sometimes what we run across is, should it be a technical leader? Should it be a CTO or a CIO? It can be, but it could also as easily be a CMO. It could be a COO. It could be anyone on the leadership team that really has a belief. I mean, everyone organizationally should be aligned on the belief, but has this vision for what's possible. And I would say has some sort of technical bent, at least, to understand. And
Sure.
really
I'm curious.
someone who's passionate about it.
Right, right. You've got to have the passion and have a posture, right? And a posture that the CEO and the remaining C-suite members, board investors can get behind, right? I'm curious to hear from the audience. Do you have any strong opinions as to who should own AI in an organization today? And certainly the size of the organization matters, of course, but curious if there's any strong opinions out there. One thing that I'm constantly hearing about this AI age that we're living in is this is far, and you just said it yourself, Jason, this is far more than technology. This is change management,
Right.
right? And technologists don't necessarily have a change management background and or skill set, right? Change management's tough, right? And I've read a lot of books on change management. Typically, they say the average workforce, if you're implementing change, you get about 20% of the workforce that actually changes their behavior and habits through sophisticated change management implementation. So it's hard stuff, right? So if you can find someone, in my opinion, I'm curious what your opinion is, that brings the passion, brings the capabilities, right? Brings the vision, and they have a change management background, right? That seems to be, to me, qualifications, experience, skills that would lend itself pretty well to implementing AI across an organization. What do you think?
I think that's a great approach. I think bringing someone in from the outside is a great approach. Someone who, and I see in the chat, I do agree, someone who has a high EQ, because it's a change to the workforce. I mean, you're potentially going to have roles where, let's say, there's the 10 core responsibilities or the 10 things they do on a daily basis, and now potentially in a year, 9 out of the 10 things they do are orchestrating and telling the AI agents what to do. And so just these profound changes in what people are doing in their job and the kind of things that go along with that from a people management perspective. And so, yeah, I would totally agree with that. That's a great
Okay.
idea. I mean, and another thing I have noticed that, everyone's busy running the business. Everyone's in the business. running the business, just trying to deal with the battle that is business. And so bringing another person to the executive team, another person who can literally just live in the headspace of AI, that doesn't mean you don't have to do that as the rest of the leadership team. It just means having someone fully dedicated, I think is a great idea. I think of the things to invest in against the risks, the headwinds. I think it's great.
Yeah, and fantastic. A couple folks mentioned the COO. I love that idea, the COO, who is a modern, forward-thinking COO who's implemented technology and change management. I think they could certainly be a really interesting candidate for that remit. What about let's ask the audience here. Quick gut check. If you're looking at your org today, does it feel built for humans only, or is there space for agents too? Type humans if your org is still pretty traditional, and type agents if you're starting to design for both. Okay. So I believe a lot of the executives today who are incredibly talented, exceptional leaders, they haven't had time to wrap their head around a lot of this, right? When we interact with an executive who is between positions, it's pretty much my first piece of advice of how they should be spending their time right now. I'll say, get on section school, educate yourself. You've got an advantage in the market against those who have full-time jobs, who are interviewing for the same position. You can go in with a tremendous amount of education while you have the time to invest in your AI learning and development, right? And be able to turn interviews into workshops by asking the right questions around, are they prepared to drive transformation and growth with the use of AI? And frankly, that's oftentimes even how newly created positions become developed, right? A lot of organizations aren't even ready to assign AI to one specific leader, but they meet the right leader with the right thoughts, the right vision, the right abilities, and there you go. All of a sudden, they've created a role for themselves. So I believe, Jason, a lot of leaders don't know where to start to build an AI agent. It's far easier than it sounds, right? That you can actually build an AI agent. Everybody here in this room can build an AI agent within 5 minutes. Any insight, direction, can you make it less intimidating? I also believe that, and I know you believe that this is something that leaders almost have to take the opposite approach of everything they've learned about being a leader, which means delegate, don't be on the keyboard, right? Lead by empowering others. This is quite different. And I'm curious your take on, should folks at the C-suite start learning how to build their own agents so they understand the possibilities and capabilities, or is that not the best use of their time?
So it's a great question, right? Because as leaders, constantly drilled into our heads that you should delegate everything that you can, right? To free up headspace. Well, free up headspace for what? This happens to be one of them. I'm a big believer that everyone from the top down, so the leaders, the CEO, the owners, should be spending time with AI. Spend time inside the core LLMs, GPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini. Try these different models, play around with the projects, build basic agents with basic instructions, start to get familiar with it. I'm also really big on the different modalities. Go make yourself an AI avatar with HeyGen. Go clone your voice with 11 Labs. Go take those things and then create generative podcasts, one-pager PDFs. Go even to something like Runway ML and make video and learn how to prompt to make video. and then start to take things where you're doing image generation with Dolly or Midjourney, you turn it into video. Why? Maybe you're not going to be making movies in your career. Your business doesn't do that because you're going to learn something. That's for me, in my opinion, because of my experience with this, I've learned a lot through using these different AI things to you really start to understand how AI is thinking or how you need to communicate with AI. And a lot, and back to the business model thing that we talked about, if you're going to be thinking about what are the business models, what business model will you have in the future, you have to have an understanding of this.
Yeah, yeah. And it's really difficult to be the executive in the room when you're hearing a team try to solve a problem and you're not in a position to say, have you thought about the use of AI? Right? I believe executives need to get up to speed with the possibilities of these tools so they know when to ask the right questions of their teams. They can't assume that the teams in their individuals in their workforce are up to speed on the possibilities. So it's up to them to really understand the possibilities so they can ask those questions.
Yeah, and I think, a real low-tech example could be something in manufacturing and you're repairing gears or you're making nuts and bolts or something that's really kind of it might be high tech in the manufacturing process, but its usage is considered low tech. And what about from a marketing perspective? You might start to think, hey, can we make custom marketing videos that are oriented towards every one of our buyers that suddenly show our product in some sort of animated way? And you wouldn't even think about that unless you're playing with these tools because your natural inclination is going to be like, I'm not even going to think in my head to do something that would require like a full-on video production team and it would be, 50 grand for every single one I want to do. And if you're trying these different tools, you might suddenly have a thought like, I could do that for 12 cents.
Yep. It's going to be critical. And I will say, this is where some of our confidential searches are coming to fruition, right? Because the boards and investors don't believe that the many executives at the top are asking the right questions and leaning into the possibilities fast enough, and that they don't have a posture, right? And that when they say, you've got to find efficiencies at the next level, we want to see what your plans are for AI, and they're stumbling, right? There's immediate concern, right? And there's just this really strong appetite for that modern leader. And that's why obviously everybody is here today. Okay, I think we're ready for Q&A.
Cool.
Do you see the questions, Jason?
I see questions. Yes.
I do not. So if you want to take what you see.
Yeah. So I like the question. Jen asked the question. I'm curious. Well, hold on, it's going fast here. When we talk about experience, are we talking about practical and tactical experience or also emotional experience of working with others? We still need to work cross-functionally with other humans. Does AI also expedite this experience to the younger generations entering the workforce? So this is just a great question because I think the generational differences in the workforce is really, really important to look at. And you still have humans. It's not like AI right now, at least, is replacing humans entirely for the organization. But if you're 22, you might build yourself a renowned agent that is a psychologist on organizational behavior. And now you have a chat agent that can help you with any problem you're having when you're communicating with other people and how to resolve issues. So I think it can affect all of these things, and even something like emotional IQ, is something typically we don't think of as learning the same way as intelligence, but AI gives you tools to help do a better job of it. That's what I think, at least.
Yeah, yeah. I'm with you on that. I've also seen it. So some folks are talking about sales and AI. We're seeing a lot of organizations build agents and avatars for sales teams to practice on. So they're pitching, right? an avatar, and they can make all the mistakes they want, right? And then the AI tool is coaching them and developing them on tips for a stronger, more effective pitch. So what do you think is the most common use right now for agents? What do you see a common theme in terms of the type of agents organizations are building right now?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple different arenas. Just we'll talk about the basics of it. Um, we'll call it a executive assistant. So just being able to have meeting transcription, which I think everyone has, but then being able to do something with that meeting transcription to summarize and collate it is one thing. I think another one that's kind of a real, I'll call it basic only because it's kind of easy to do, is what I call brand voice and tone. So one, you can generate using something like Perplexity or Claude in combination with all your marketing guidelines, et cetera, a cohesive brand voice and tone document or knowledge graph. And then from there, you really can train the agent to use that. And so if you want to write an email, hey, rewrite this email in my brand voice, and then everyone could use that. Or hey, I have this content, change it in my brand voice. And you start to get into some of these things that kind of are typically a little harder to have across the organization. The other area is a lot of around OCR, and so the ability to really read pieces of information that are normally manually inputted. There's still a lot of that where you have a sheet of paper and someone's got to type something in, or you have a PDF that's a screenshot of something, you're typing something in, and the ability to do that is pretty high. Seeing also reading schematics, blueprints, creating quotes and estimates, and even if they're not, one of the things that's interesting is even if you're not using it for your quote, like let's say you're, a tool and die shop and you're like, you want to make a quotation, or you're in construction and you have a blueprint and you want to create a scope, you use it as kind of like a sanity check against whoever is making the estimate or whoever is providing the scope. Those are a couple areas.
Fantastic. So we have some great questions here. And actually, I forgot to ask you an important question. There's a lot of debate around the future of the org chart. I could be at a dinner with 10 CEOs. 5 will say agents should be on the org chart, and the other 5 say absolutely not. It's technology. It should never go on the org chart. What's your point of view on this?
Well, first thing I'll say is, society doesn't care whether you think it should be on the org chart, right? So time is going to tell what kind of pans out. I think that you should be looking at the org chart, and there should be boxes that you're thinking about filling with humans and boxes you're thinking about filling with, we'll call them agents. And you should be looking at your org chart, and if you're doing something like EOS, your accountability chart, and trying to understand which portions of each role can now be done by AI. Because this is the thing. If you're just focused departmentally, you might be like, okay, I'm going to have this assistant, the brand, tone, and voice that helps my marketing team. You're thinking about it as a departmental, but AI is different. You might be able to pull off one task across 7 roles, across 7 departments, and create a new role that isn't really logical with a human doing it, but with AI could be. And so you have to start looking at things like that because of the possible force multiplier effects on your business. And look, even if you don't implement all of that, you have to explore it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So it might even be temporarily, right? Just so.
Learn it exactly. And I think that's kind of one of the things, I always try to really get across is do stuff. Even if you're not going to use what you just did, you're going to learn.
Yep.
And then when these models are changing fast, so you wake up and one of these models is now able to do something that was not even thought of a week ago, you're at least in a position organizationally where you can adapt.
Yeah. Yep. Well said. Gary had a great question. How important is it for the CEO to have functional execution skills, which we were talking about this earlier, which is traditionally or alternatively have skills in tools building and process management in an AI forward team?
It's interesting, right? Like there's still obviously, I mean, in some ways, everything continues to get more technical. Even if you were to compare an executive today versus an executive 40 years ago or 80 years ago, I mean, every highly more technical comparatively. So I think it's just kind of how it is. There's just more technical knowledge. Now, the good news is you don't necessarily know how, you don't need to know how to code, right? Because now you have the ability to talk to the
Mhm.
AI, but I think you have no choice. You have to understand more of this.
And I think it's so for me, it's nights and weekends. It's not how I'm spending my time during the day, right? It's nights and weekends. And we all know at this level, this is not a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday job. And so I just feel strongly that it's impossible to know the questions to ask if you just don't understand the possibilities of how powerful these tools are. So it requires you to be hands-on, right? That's not going to be indefinitely, but for you to start to wrap your head around how powerful these tools are, it's nearly impossible to be asking the right questions in the right room.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, I spent a weekend playing around with, was making like movies in Runway ML, which is a video generation tool. I use that in conjunction with Mid Journey, which does images. And it was just super interesting because the way that you have to talk, I'll use the word talk, even though I was typing, the way that you have to interface with the AI tools, it's not exactly human-like. So it's kind of adjacent to that, but it really gets you thinking about like, okay, like this is how AI is kind of thinking about these problems. And it just really expands your mind.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
really cool too.
Yeah, it's slightly addictive. All right. Well, I'd love to wrap it up. Unless Jason, do you see any other questions that you're compelled to tackle? Probably have two more minutes, and then we'll do our wrap up.
Yeah, I'm just looking through here.
Thank you, audience. You've been fantastic with your interactivity in the chat.
I think, yeah, I think this is actually a really good question here from Michael. How do you decide which of the 700 AI options to use? So I think if you educate yourself on what is actually like there, like what is AI, is the LLMs, you have the knowledge graph, it will help you understand that a lot of these tools, they're literally just wrapping the LLM and the instruction that you could use in GPT or you could use in Claude with a couple buttons and knobs. And I think the more you kind of understand what the tool does versus what it doesn't do, like how much of it is really just it's instructing GPT or Claude, and then it's just giving you like a little form you fill in. And the more you kind of cut through that, I think the better off you'll be to be like, okay, like we need to have our base LLMs. We need to, someone mentioned N8N, which is an automation tool, which is great, kind of understand those pieces. So that'll
Yeah,
help.
you blew my mind, Jason, when I showed you HyperWrite. And HyperWrite is this content creation tool, and it has 40 different categories of content, right, that you can generate and create with this tool called HyperWrite AI. Well, Jason said, Camille, this is just smoke and mirrors. Every single one of these categories that this platform has is just a prompt.
It's just a prompt. Yeah, totally.
So you just have to learn prompt engineering, right? Which we're all capable of learning. You just have to learn how to prompt these tools and not get fooled by the packaging.
Now I'll say, like in terms of the stages you're going on, you get through proof of concept. You might want to, so for in the example of brand, tone, and voice, actually, that's an easy one, but like that might be one where when you roll it out to like all the people in the organization beyond, core group, you might want to make it where it has a little more, plug and play where they don't have to know the prompting as
Right,
well.
right,
But it's kind of like the later part of it.
right. Just know where your dollars are going, right? If you're going for a packaged, easy user experience with the prompts already there for your work, for your teams, versus teaching them prompt engineering, right? Those are two different solutions, right? Depending on your workforce. Any final comments on that, Jason?
Well, Jamie just was asking, do we really have to know how to prompt? This is like when they told us we'd need to learn HTML. I guess my answer to that is prompting is easier than HTML, like dramatically
Yes.
easier. So, um, I would say you should learn it because it's not that hard compared to HTML. But I know what you're talking about because I remember that. So
I did. I took HTML in college. No, dating myself. Okay. Well, Jason, you mentioned Section School. You and I are both student members of Section School. So I just wanted to let everyone know that if you're curious about Section School, we actually, and the best way to describe Section School is it's essentially like master class, but solely focused on how to lead in the age of AI. So if you're interested in Section School further, we actually have a discount redemption code. You can email us at info@talentfoot.com and use the subject line Section School with your interest in your specific interest around Section School, whether it's for yourself, your team, and we'll make sure we get you we get you hooked up. And then if you're interested in discussing anything related to AI transformation and or talent, you can certainly email that same email address as well, and we will get to you as soon as possible. That's a wrap. Thank you all so much for being here. Huge thanks to Jason for joining us and for sharing with us all of your AI wisdom and knowledge. I hope you're all walking away with some nuggets that you can take back to your teams and your organizations. Thank you so much for talking about the future of the workforce. Grateful for your time this afternoon.
thank
And
you.
there is a link for a 60-second survey. If you could fill that out, we'd be grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.